to the cloud. All right. So Ashley, I'll kick it off to you.
Thank you for being here. This is really Christina's class, but it's also a program open to all alumni students. So thank you to those who are here as part of the class and those who aren't. We appreciate it. We're really excited today to be our different panelists here to talk about public service careers in the private sector. So this should be really interesting. Off with a few questions of our own, but we definitely want to make sure that there's questions at the end for you guys if you have questions for the panelists. So please, by all means, reserve your questions. We will make sure there's time for it at the end. For those of you in person, obviously, you can feel free to ask. Those on the Zoom, we encourage you to unmute and turn your camera on, even if you're so inclined to ask questions towards the end. So I don't know many of you because many of you have heard of Christina's class. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Ashley Dwyer, and I'm the Director of Career Services and Employer Relations here at Rockefeller. So pass over to Christina to get started.
Thanks, Ashley. So yeah, so basically just for you guys in person here, I know it's kind of a funny method here with the hybrid Zoom in person. So whenever we're asking questions, you can feel free to just stand up and use the mic. So just as a heads up for that. But yeah, so we'll get started with for all panelists. So please introduce yourself, including your career path and current role and responsibilities. And whoever would like to go first, feel free to kick it off.
Maybe,
yeah, I was gonna say, Madeline, do you want to go?
Yeah, let's do it.
Go for it.
All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. My name is Madeline Waitson. I am a two-time graduate of UAlbany. I graduated with my undergraduate degree in 2022, and then I graduated with my MPA also from Rockefeller in 2024. And since I have graduated from Rockefeller, I work at Deloitte, which is it's a lot of things, but the division that I work in is a consulting firm. So I work in the government public services consulting division. So I work with a large state Medicaid program and help provide policy and programmatic advice and analysis to the clients that I work with. And I use the skills that I learned at Rockefeller every day. My MPA especially is super, super applicable to the work that I do at Deloitte. And yeah, I feel very lucky that I have such a career that's very applicable to the skills that I learned here at school. So I'm looking forward to talking more about it and answering your questions.
Student in here. All right. And Kayla, do you want to go?
In-person people then see that.
I didn't know there was going to be a mic. Hi, my name is Kaylee Navarro. I went to SUNY Oneonta for my undergraduate degree in communications, and then I went over to Rockefeller for my master's in international affairs, concentration in homeland security. So me being at Regeneron was kind of a shock to me too, working in pharmaceuticals and going from homeland security to that. But really what I do is work in the investigation side of things. So really that's the compliance piece of manufacturing for drugs. So if anything goes wrong on the floor, if you deviate from your expected state, we have to basically show that our product is still safe and quality, and so we can give it to patients. So the skills that I kind of really honed in on from my experience at Rockefeller was a lot of the technical writing, problem solving skills, the collaborative efforts you have to do every single day with your team. All those skills I got put up against at Rockefeller, so I use those. And that's why I was able to go from Homeland Security, International Affairs aspect into pharmaceutical industry now. But yeah, excited to answer your questions.
Thanks, Kaylee. And Jesse, either of you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jessie Lunson. I'm sorry I can't be there in person. I'm calling in from Brooklyn, New York, though. I got my undergrad from SUNY Albany as well as my graduate degree. And I spent over 20 years in the intersection of politics and technology. I had a deep, deep interest in understanding how data and privacy compliance are basically created, how data is collected from others, how it is stored and how it's used, particularly in the application of digital advertising, which is where I've spent the majority of my career. So Upon graduating with my MPA in 2024, I now work in a tech company environment where I basically have the ability to apply my digital advertising experience alongside my MPA to really help focus on advising customers and businesses and small local communities around how digital advertising strategy and compliance can work best for them. Thanks for having me.
Great. Thanks, Jesse.
And hi everyone, I'm Pamela Mejia. I graduated from Albany in spring 2020, so the COVID year really. I did the semester in Washington program that spring, so I interned in Congress for a member from New York. I'm from Yonkers, New York, and I'm based in DC right now. And then I got a full-time job on the Hill in Congress with current Democratic Whip Catherine Clark, and then I moved on to consulting. So I've been doing this for about 4 years now, helping clients in the healthcare, transportation, violence prevention, and tax spaces with just congressional engagement and engaging federal agencies. So happy to answer any questions and really happy to be here.
Thank you all so much for your introductions. So I'll go right into our next question, and this one is for you, Madeline. And that is, how did your internship experience contribute to your career growth and current role?
Right, I'm back. My internship experience was definitely very applicable to my current role at Deloitte. The internship that I did in grad school was with the comptroller's office downtown in Albany. I worked on data analysis and policy analysis. And in that role, I got the experience of working kind of as a consultant in the data analytics team because other teams within the comptroller's office would ask the data analytics team for help. So I got the experience of having like the consultant client relationship where as a consultant, you are working on developing a product and kind of going back and forth with your client to make sure that it is what they're looking for and that everybody's satisfied with the final product. But also in my time at UAlbany when I was an undergrad, I did the Senate internship for a semester. And that was also super, super relevant to my role in consulting because the role that I have now is super relevant to New York state politics. So it's helpful to know what the legislative cycle is like, how to write policy, how to understand legislative drafting language, and just have a general idea of what the policy process is like in New York State. And then also in undergrad, I did a couple of other internships at nonprofits, which just generally helped sharpen like my writing skills, my communication skills. So I would say for students who are still in school, it's helpful to get a really wide range of internship experiences because mine were pretty much all across the board, but I can pick out specific pieces from all of them that I still use in my job today. And I wouldn't say that because of one specific internship is where I ended up today. It's kind of like a mix of all of the ones that I was able to do when I was in school.
Just making sure we're recording too. I think we are. Yep. Okay, good.
So this next one's for Pam. So at ML Strategies, how do you translate complex policy issues into strategies that resonate with both policymakers and private sector clients?
Yeah, that's a really important aspect of my job. So, as you all know, the congressional bills and just different policies can span tons of pages, and it's really important to make sure that the clients understand what's going on in probably a 1 to 2, 3 page memo. So it's really just getting used to working on in the space, like breaking down the bills, analyzing it, and really just pulling out the most important parts of it. And I think with that just takes practice. So it's really important, and I think just really engaging, getting institutional knowledge of how Congress works, listening to hearings, and really participating in those things really helps kind of synthesize the memo and the work that we do there. So
Awesome. Thank you. And moving on to Jesse, this one's for you. How have you leveraged your MPA degree in the private technology sector since graduating? Because I know you talked about your experience in sales and the intersection of that. So can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, definitely. So I graduated with my undergrad in rhetoric and communications. I always worked in sales, but in my free time, had a passion to work in politics and to figure out how to bring the two together. And so I was kind of lucky with the pandemic as well. I decided to start my program in 2020 for my MPA. And I did that remotely. So it actually opened up a lot of space as we were all, our lives looked a lot different back then than they do now. But I actually like candidly didn't really know what I was going to do with my MPA. I just knew that I wanted to figure out a way to bring sort of like technology, as I was saying, like all these different areas that I thought was very much part of like, the political cycle. Like a lot of politicians were trying to understand, how data was collected, how AI was used, how facial recognition technologies worked. And that was very similar to like what I was learning and kind of doing every day in a role at a technology company. And so since graduating, I found that my MPA actually translates a lot more seamlessly into the private sector than I thought. And even in my current role, and while it hasn't changed dramatically since I've gotten my degree, right now I work in a business development and sales role where essentially I go out to local communities and I talk about the offerings and benefits of the technology provider that I represent. So as an example, like going into a local community, say like in the Boston area, and just meeting with small business owners or even communities members, and really educating them on the different ways that technology can actually enhance or benefit what they're already doing. And what my training with my MBA really allowed me to do is really understand how these communities are structured, have more pointed and valuable conversations, understand how some of these decisions are being made, and then really how to tie back some of the private and public sector sort of values together to really earn trust with some of these stakeholders that I'm working with. So I think there's a lot of additional opportunity also in the future as far as like how you can actually bring that public sector work into the technology sector. But for the time being, I've been able to really even just apply it in my general role now.
Excellent. Yeah, it's always good to hear. It's interesting to hear how it is integrating because it's not always the first thought of how it would. So I'll pass it on to Christina to add the next one. Ask the next question.
All right. All right. So next question is for you, Kaylee. So feel free whenever you're ready to come up here. And the question is, in your role at Regeneron, how does investigative work contribute to advancing public service goals?
Um, so at Regeneron, I think our core values really stand at providing and enhancing quality products out to patients. But in terms of the investigative role, the whole purpose of that is to pretty much be the stop between if anything goes wrong in distributing your products. And with that, you have the opportunity to, one, identify an issue, but also be able to find what is the root cause of that and be able to implement any corrective or preventive actions that could ever lead to that reoccurring again. So really, it's a small piece of the puzzle in terms of compliance, but it's really important in terms of public service goals, ensuring that you have one quality drugs out to patients, which is something that is super important, but also two, providing transparency, accountability, to regulatory agencies. That way that you can ensure that the drugs you are putting out are not something that's going to ever like harm our public and maintain that public trust. Does that answer the question fully too? More about like just like public goals? Okay, perfect.
Yeah, thank you, Kaylee. So, general student questions first. Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess we'll pause quickly. We have some more general questions for the panelists, but are there any questions from the students? We want to make sure you're able to address any questions you may have.
Yeah, and feel free, as always, guys, on Zoom, unmute yourselves, put it in the chat, and then in person, same thing as well. I'm just giving you guys a second here. All right. Any questions, guys, so far?
We can come back to it at
Yeah.
the end too.
Yeah. So, all right. So, our next question, again, just general for all panelists, and feel free to, again, jump in whenever you feel ready, is what is something about working at the intersection of public service and the private sector that you weren't aware of and or has surprised you?
I can,
Yes.
I
Yeah,
can,
Jesse, go ahead.
sorry, I also
No,
can't
no,
tell
you're good. You're good.
chatter in the room, so please tell me if someone was starting to
Oh,
talk.
no, no, you're all good, Jesse. Go ahead.
I was going to say, like, coming from like the tech side, right, of the private sector, government are customers of the tech sector, right? And so I think that there is a significant misunderstanding or just not like a general understanding of how the private sector or I'm sorry, how the public sector actually operates and works. So like I can give you an example of this. So say like here in New York City, like MTA is going to, I'm not sure if everyone knows this, if you're in New York often, but they faded out all Metro cards. And they now have like the Omni system, which you can download on your phone. It's an Omni card. But there was a huge advertising campaign in New York City around this just to get the word out. And this would be a type of opportunity that like I would have to be able to educate the MTA about maybe, the technology platform that I work at would be a good way for them to, reach customers and be able to educate on these services. And I think that, it's very surprising that not that many people understand maybe how the MTA works or the different types of decision, stakeholders that they have, or, the way that they're thinking about, running these types of campaigns. And so for me, that was something that I didn't expect is just sort of like the volume of jobs and like the interest in my skill set, given the fact that like I have been in the private sector my entire career, but, have this area of public sector experience that has been really valuable.
Great. Thank you, Jesse. Any other thoughts from the panelists on that question before we move on? If not, that's okay too. Um, so I'll ask one more, Ashley, and then I'll hand it over to you. So next question is, how did your network, especially as alumni, help shape your career growth?
Yeah, I'll start.
Yeah.
My situation, obviously, I was in the semester in Washington program, and that really changed my career. I didn't have like this intricate plan post grad in terms of I know I wanted to be in policy and government, but the semester in Washington program really launched my career into working in Congress and being a lobbyist now, consultant, and it's really my dream and passion. So I would say I'm very thankful for that. They connect us with people that work in government and are U Albany alums. It's just a really great network. And I think it also taught me how to, network in a wise way. So if you are doing internships or even going to your jobs, I recommend having a spreadsheet to track your relationships. So that's something I do. I'll have one tab government officials, another tab nonprofit, another one private sector, and really just tracking all of your relationships because it's really helpful in your current role or whether you're looking for a new job. Just having all of that in one area and spreadsheet is really important. And posting on LinkedIn, I will say that is also very helpful as well. So, yeah.
Be scared, but it's worth it.
That'll be our next couple weeks. We'll do that in class. So, yeah, other thoughts from the panelists on that question? Yeah, go ahead, Kaylee.
Never loved
Okay,
standing
you
in front of a
guys are
microphone.
gonna say
So funny story, actually, in one of my Rockefeller courses, you work with a lot of people and you do a lot of collaborative work, but I was trying to find an internship and I was like desperate to find one because you have to have one to graduate. And it's very hard to get an internship. I'm sure you guys all understand that. But I had applied through, talking with the team there. I don't know, Yolitsa, who
Yeah.
works over, but yeah.
So-
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, so many degrees of separation, yeah.
Yeah, she's wonderful and super helpful.
Yeah.
But she also threw out the idea of CART, which is Center for Advanced Red Teaming. That's over at SUNY Albany here. But I was applied for it, and then one of my fellow classmates, Jenna, she was like, "Oh, I actually work there, and I actually would love if you did." So it was kind of like a good way in which like you don't realize the people that you're working with every day in your classroom is actually someone that could also advocate for you on the outside world in your internship. So like I think it's really a good note to always remember that, you make relationships everywhere you go. And it was nice to have that additional like, you know, insider person to be like, out of all the people that have applied for this job, you should take a look at her. So that was really helpful. And that internship really shaped where I ended up going afterwards. So yeah.
Yeah, some people are really like, Albany is such a strong network inherently in and of itself.
Yeah.
And not just faculty, staff, but also students too, fellow students. Jesse, I saw you had unmuted. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's all really helpful advice. I mean, I really enjoyed the opportunity that Rockefeller gave us as students to interact with like experts that came into our classes, or even I think we had like coffees with other people in the profession that you had a chance to just like speak to. I took every opportunity to connect with those that, like, for example, were on this panel, that, were speaking in our classes just to like introduce myself, understand a little bit more about what they did. And I actually found that like some of the direction I initially thought I would move in from networking, after finding out sort of like details and like the day to day of like what those roles and responsibilities would be, it actually kind of like course corrected some of the interests that I had after that. So not only does it like allow you to have a network to build on and to call on and to engage with, but I think it can also help you like more deeply understand the work that you could potentially be pursuing and see if that really could be the right fit for you or not.
Right. No, it's hard to see early on, but it is a two-way street, and you do want to make sure it's the right fit for you too, and that can be very helpful. Yeah, go for it. Any other thoughts? I want to neglect you, Pam, if you want to, or Madeline, if you want to add anything. Otherwise, we can move on. No pressure. So moving into the next question, this one I like. In your opinion, what are the benefits of working in the private sector? Which aspects of your role are most rewarding, but also what are some challenges that you face? I think it's equally important for students to hear both.
I can take this one.
Sure, awesome. Thanks, man.
There's a lot of questions. Make sure I capture all. Okay, the benefits of working in the private sector. I think one of my favorite things about working in the private sector is the pace of the work. I like that it's challenging. I like that it's very engaging. I like that it's hard. I find it really interesting. When I was in grad school and I was reflecting back on my past internships and I was thinking about what type of job that I wanted, I realized that I had done a couple of internships that I really liked, but that I just wasn't super engaged with. And when I was working every day, I didn't feel like I was being challenged. I didn't feel like I was growing. And I knew that if I shifted to the private sector, that I would definitely be challenged and that I would be forced to grow. And that has definitely been the case in a good way. What's the most rewarding? I think being able to work with clients who are in government but on the private sector side is so incredibly rewarding because you're able to kind of attack the problems from a different perspective than people who are internal to the organizations are able to. Just in the private sector, you have different resources, you have different teammates that you're working with, you might have some more leeway to work on problems, and you might have more time, more capability in terms of like, this is the only thing that you're thinking about versus maybe your clients are working on 10 different things at once and you can really focus on just this issue. And I think that it is a really unique way to make an impact in the government. What are some challenges? I mean, it's challenging work. It's hard to try to come in from an outside organization and assess a problem, be able to come up with a solution. It's something that, of course, takes a lot of practice and takes a lot of teamwork and collaboration with people who have been in the field longer than you have. So there's definitely a lot to learn. But I think kind of going back to what I said at the beginning, that's what makes it so interesting is that there's just so much to learn. The people, specifically in consulting and in all private sector fields, are so knowledgeable and so caring about what they do. And I think it's just, I was telling Kaylee before, I think it's just like the best of both worlds with being able to work in consulting, but work with the government when you do so.
Thanks, Madeline. Yeah, other thoughts on that question from our panelists? No pressure.
I can jump
Sure,
in.
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. We'd love to.
I was just going to say, like in the private sector, like if you're working in a really big company, there's probably a lot of opportunity to explore different types of roles. So, like as I said, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with my MPA. I've been using it to really enhance, what I was doing before and engage on a deeper level with these local communities. But recently, a new opportunity has popped up to explore like advertising policy and how that actually is like implemented and executed and rolled out. And so I think that there's like sort of this ever-changing opportunity to try out new things in the private sector that might not necessarily exist in the public. But at the same time, like, I think it's one trade-off is, again, like maybe finding that purpose in the work that doesn't always maybe necessarily exist in the same way that it does in the private, or I'm sorry, in the public.
Excellent. Great. So in the beginning, you guys talked a lot about skills and how that translated from your degrees into your career, but I'd like to delve deeper into that. In your current role, what skills gained from your academic programs have been most applicable, would you say? And what did you have to learn quickly on the job? I always think it's good to like pinpoint what those skills are because they can feel ambiguous to the students sometimes, or what those experiences were like. No pressure. Anyone wants to dive in?
I can take this one.
Sure, thank you.
Thanks, I think specifically well, I guess I'll start with undergrad. Skills in undergrad that are super useful in working is how to read something that is really complex. So whether that's like a policy or a law or something like in my political theory class, something that was maybe written like hundreds of years ago, trying to understand what they're saying, that is super helpful because reading laws and reading policies is basically like reading a different language. So being able to kind of pull out the key takeaways from something that is really complicated is always a useful skill. In grad school, I will say one of the most useful things that I picked up is how to use Excel. I use Excel, which everybody probably does every day, and being savvy in it and not having to ask for help and not having to always Google what a formula is super helpful. So if you have a chance to learn about Excel in class, super, super helpful. It's just nice to know those things and feel confident, especially as like an analyst, as like someone just starting out in work, being able to kind of have those skills down will help your managers trust you and make them feel like they can give you work. Things that I had to learn on the job, I would say networking is something that takes practice and something that I really learned a lot of once I started at Deloitte because you have to get really good at talking about yourself and talking about what you do and what you want to do. And I think a lot of times in school, we talk about the things that we're learning and maybe the internships that we're in. But once you are in the professional environment, that kind of goes into the past and you're really interested in learning about and talking about what work you want to be doing. So it's just kind of a different way of reframing who you are as a professional and then being able to make connections with people in that way.
Yeah. Others? Other thoughts? Love to hear it. For sure.
I would like echo a lot of what you said about what gaining skills, and I would say also too the technical writing aspects. A lot of that, if you can take something you can look at and basically analyze it and come to a conclusion, you really can do a lot of things. But I would say one thing that I really learned and had to learn a lot in my current position is navigating the ambiguity that comes your way every day. But again, you kind of get to fall back on your core skills that you've learned to be able to kind of navigate that. And I think that another thing that's really important to do in situations where you get thrown a lot of new things is maintaining a positive attitude. I think that's something that a lot of your coworkers and your bosses, if you maintain a positive attitude and kind of have that half cup, half full kind of mentality towards things that come at you, a lot of more opportunities tend to open up to you. Yeah.
Thanks, Keely.
And I'll just briefly add, for undergrad, obviously you guys are all managing multiple classes and coursework, and that's the same in a multi-client consulting space. There's different clients that have needs. A lot of them are at the same time. So it's really just it was helpful undergrad knowing how to just hone in on my time management skills, and that's been really useful in my role now, and it's been helpful just in helping me grow out the firm and moving up. So just wanted to add that.
Thanks, Sam. All right. Sure, go. Take it away.
All right, so just want to pause for a second and again just give students time to ask questions for our panelists here because I know Ashley and I have talked a lot here, so you got to hear yes. So both, yeah, Ariadna, do you want to come? I know I bug you guys when I asked you to come up. Do you want to come up here? Thank you.
I wanted to ask for those who got their MPA at Rockefeller, what did you concentrate in?
Thanks, Fran. So, just everyone hear that on the panel?
Yeah, I can jump in here. I concentrate in information technology.
Awesome. If you, no pressure, but if you want to elaborate on how the concentration maybe played into it, too, your role or your career?
Yeah, you know, it was a very challenging choice. Like I really loved learning all the different types of topics. I'm actually like in all listening to the panelists here as well about all the different directions they decided to take their career. But kind of circling back to what I said in the beginning about like how data particularly is collected and stored and leveraged. It was sort of the backbone of that. The foundation is information technology. And so I wanted to learn as much as I could about how that infrastructure actually operated. And then how, furthermore, it was thought about and regulated. And that's what led me to that concentration. And again, it's something that like, I can even apply today as we think about like what does like advertising policy look like? How are technology platforms thinking about how data essentially that they have about, different types of customers? How is that collected? How is that privacy compliant? And then how can that be used by other parties in order to enhance an overall advertising experience?
Thanks, Jesse.
No, of course, yeah. I concentrated in public policy. I picked public policy for a couple reasons. I thought that it was the most general of the concentrations, which was what I was looking for because when I started grad school, I didn't know what I wanted to do for a job. So I was like, I don't know, it covers the most ground, which I thought would be helpful. But I found the classes for the public policy concentration really interesting because I studied political science in undergrad. So I was just really interested in learning about different policy areas and just trying to see which policy areas I found interesting. There were classes on like environmental policy, state and local policy, health policy, like lots of different things that you could kind of specialize in for a semester. And I found those classes really helpful to just try to understand, kind of scratching the surface a little bit of what the huge world of that specific policy was. I found really helpful. And also with public policy, there was a lot of writing, which is super helpful in my job. And I think probably in any job, just knowing how to, like Kaylee was saying, take something that's really technical and maybe not something that you're an expert in and be able to like pull the key takeaways out and create a summary and kind of like draw it up at a higher level and be able to communicate that with someone. That is something that you will use for the rest of your life. I pretty much can guarantee, regardless of what your job is. And public policy was really helpful for that because it was a lot of areas that I knew. Some of them I knew a lot about, some of them I didn't, and I just had to kind of dive in and make myself an expert for the time being and being able to like write a policy memo or write a paper about something like that.
Could give the non-MPAs too, if you want to talk about a concentration or a minor, anything from your degree as well. No pressure, but feel free to dive in as well. All right, let's have a few questions in the chat.
Yeah, I'm just gonna do that. So, all right. All right. So Troy asked, how do you hone in on working in the private sector instead of government?
Yeah, I can start there. After working on the Hill for about 2 years, I also worked at a nonprofit doing legislative affairs work. So I was able to start kind of representing an organization instead of being in-house in Congress, but representing an organization and advocating to Congress specifically on gun violence prevention issues. So my time there really prepared me to then go into a multi-client consulting space. And there I was able to bring in my former job as a client, and they've been a client of mine now for 4 years. So it's just kind of having that experience with an organization before going to multi-client, but you can also start in a multi-client space. We have people that intern with our firm and then they go work on the Hill or they just stay in the lobbying space. So I would say that that's how it's done. Skills are mostly just like memo writing, interpersonal skills, a lot of networking in the job with the job. But I would just kind of say that. Happy to talk more offline about that too, but I'll keep it tight.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Any thoughts?
All right. Madeline, go ahead.
Yeah, since I also work in consulting, something that Pam said before and something that Jesse said earlier about being able to kind of switch within your job was what I really liked about consulting. Because as I mentioned before, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was in grad school. And when I heard about consulting, I learned that, at least specifically at Deloitte, how it works is you get staffed on a project and you'll be working on that project for a period of time, and then you'll be put on another project. And for people who really know specifically what they want to do, they can kind of stay in the same vein and just like get really specific in that niche of consulting. But for somebody like me who doesn't really know what they wanted to do, you can kind of jump around and try different projects, try different agencies, and try different skills, which I thought was super attractive because it is basically like getting a new job without having to go through all the horrible parts of getting a new job. You can just get to try new things with new people. It's essentially like, just taking a totally new position, but you have all of the like the logistical security of having the same job. So something like that is very beneficial if you're thinking about working at like a larger firm where there are lots of different contracts, federally, state and local. Like you can just jump around and try lots of different things with virtually no administrative red tape, which was a big plus for me.
Yeah. Yes, this is how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madeline. Jill. Any other student questions before we continue in our questions? Don't be shy. Yes.
Actually, more so to what you said.
I'll just repeat it. Go ahead.
Sorry, do you want to check?
No, I'll just have to repeat it in the mic. So if you want to come up and ask,
Okay, sure.
that'd be easier, but not to put you on the spot.
I guess my question for you, Madeline, you kind of talked about in consulting how you kind of have to be your biggest advocate and jumping from project to project. I was wondering if you could talk to more a little bit about that, about how you kind of build those relationships and tell your employers like, hey, I'm the best person for this project. You should pick me to be in something completely new to you, but to put that trust in you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I mean, that's kind of the whole challenge of consulting is that you won't, especially for someone like me starting, it was my first job. I definitely was not an expert in the things that I was going into, but I think what helped me stand out, and I talked about this in my interview, and I think it's part of the reason why I got the job, is because I was able to connect the fact that I had some technical skills. So from my comptroller's internship, I had a lot of data analytics and statistics and some Excel skills. So I had like the hard skills on paper that they look for in consulting. But I would say that probably for the job that I was applying for, a lot of people had those skills. But what a lot of people didn't have was the public policy, political science, memo writing experience that I had. So I was able to kind of market myself as someone who could speak both languages, and I would be able to do the technical work. I could do the data analysis. I could understand the numbers, but then I would also be able to make a summary of them, and I could explain why this was the right conclusion and why the numbers were telling us the specific thing instead of just, supplying a data analysis to my boss and being like, I don't know, this is what the number is, you make something of it. I'm able to like take the next step and make something of it myself. So I think that if you're able to connect some unique experiences that you have and kind of tell a story about what makes you unique, that's really helpful. And that has landed me in projects that I'm really interested in because I was able to tell, my managers and my senior managers that I would be the right person for this because I have strong skills, and the skills are really what you're falling back on. It's not about being an expert in the space and knowing every single thing and, in the policy area, but it's about being able to have those critical thinking skills and knowing when to ask questions and when to do the work and the research yourself. And then being able to make a good product out of that. So it's a good question, but it's hard. I mean, that's the whole job. That's, it's like, it's a lifelong thing to be able to kind of like toe the balance between having the skills, having the expertise, but also just being a lifelong learner in consulting and knowing when you're still growing and when it's still time to, continue learning.
Yeah, love these questions.
Yeah.
Would love more. Students, any more questions? Anyone on the Zoom? Feel free to unmute. I encourage you to. I know it can be scary, but this is a unique opportunity to ask these guys questions. That's what they're here for. No? All right. I'll move on. You hang on to your questions for the end. So this next one's interesting. It's for the whole panel, whoever wants to jump in. Given your range of professional experiences, what would you say are the biggest differences between working in the private sector compared to working in other sectors? And anyone who feels like starting.
Yeah, I can start. I would say, given that I'm in a multi-client space, it's a lot of hustle there. And by that, I mean we're looking for clients and making sure they're retained and, making sure we have good projects and strategic advocacy movements to keep them really satisfied. So that's something I really enjoy about it, kind of the business aspect to it, looking for clients, making sure they're happy and really just thinking about creative ways, whether that's appropriations advocacy for federal funding or just, trying to get funding for the client in different ways or just a specific bill. I enjoy all of that. I think working in the government, obviously you have your tasks, you're working for a member of Congress, you're supporting them with the constituent correspondence, phone calls, or, helping push a bill go through or whatever it is. So I would say that's the difference, a little bit kind of more creative kind of working through the private sector, if I phrased that right. But yeah.
Excellent. Anyone else? Jump in with that one. Differences between private and other sectors? All right, we do have one final question for the panelists that would love to hear your guys' thoughts on. But before we do, any questions from the students? I know we keep pushing this, but we want to make sure that you guys are addressing what you want to know. Yeah. Go for it. Come on up, take the stage. Take the mic.
My question might be a little general, but I was just kind of wondering, like, how did you guys find all these internships that you guys said you did? Um,
How did you stand out in that process in terms of getting the internship? Good question. Whoever feels like diving in.
I can start briefly. Since my internship was in Congress, I decided to apply for offices that were in my home state of New York. So, the congressman I worked for, Jose Serrano, he was in the district that resides right adjacent to my district, which is New York 16. I worked for someone in New York 17. So, I would say if you're looking for an internship on the Hill, really start by your home state, or if you live somewhere else, like let's say Florida or Michigan, apply to those offices too. You'll have a better chance of getting the role that way.
Great point. Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. Of course.
Yeah, I would say applying for internships is very daunting. You feel like it's an endless battle to find something, but I used LinkedIn a lot in the beginning, just searching keywords like your skills. If you kind of are trying to apply certain skills to an internship, I would say that the filters on there are super helpful in navigating the locations that you want to be able to apply for, but then also too using your resources at the university. So you have, I mean, for us, we had Yolitza, who was a great like contact and being able to kind of bring in a lot of different internship opportunities and kind of distribute it out to people, but just so you were aware of them. But I would say kind of doing your own research on LinkedIn is really helpful at times, but not being afraid to kind of look outside the box a little bit, because sometimes you can kind of go a little bit narrowed, but it's good to kind of look a little bit outwards.
Too. So the first internship that I did was at the Senate here in Albany, which I got from an email from school. So read the emails that Ashley sends you because and I will come back to that because they genuinely are helpful. I know what it's like to get a million emails, but like they actually do help. From the Senate internship, then I did the semester in Washington program, which I also got from an email from school. So read the emails. And that process, I applied to like 30 internships. Like it was also COVID, so internship searching was tough. But if you're applying for a lot of internships at once, something that I found to be a super helpful time saver is when you're writing your cover letter, I wrote like maybe 5 or 6 body paragraphs that explained an internship that I had done and based on, or like an internship or a class or, whatever it was, like something specific that I wanted to highlight in my cover letter. Then I swapped those paragraphs in and out depending on the job that I was applying for rather than like rewriting the whole cover letter. That saved me a lot of time. Handshake is how I found my comptroller internship. And then I found my job at Deloitte through an email from Ashley. So it really does help. And yeah, I think just use the resources at UAlbany because it's really the best way that you'll be able to get something. And how to make yourself stand out, I think, is be able to create a story about what you've done at school and your internship to really like drive a narrative home rather than just talking about your skills or your experiences. Like use your skills and your experiences and then kind of have the so what of the story be what you want to do next and what you want to do with it. And that'll help employers be like, oh, I could see them working here because they have an interest that matches what we do here, rather than just being like, okay, great, they have Excel skills, but what do they actually want to do with that?
I can also just add to this. So, when you network, this was like one of my favorite questions to ask was like, do you have internships? It allows you to have a touch point to stay in touch with that person as well. Because sometimes you can have a really great interaction with someone, but you're not really sure where to always go with it. And then I also did volunteering within organizations that I just had interest in. And that actually opened up some opportunity for me as well. But don't be afraid to put yourself out there, I would say. And if you don't ask, you don't get. So you never know what could happen.
Great. Thank you. Any other thoughts on that question? Now we can move into our final question. Any other student questions? As we near the end here.
All right, so final question. Love to hear all your thoughts on this. So what are some final tips or advice you would give students hoping to break into public service careers in the private sector? Especially if not anticipating going into it initially, Whoever wants to dive in, no pressure.
Start. I would just say like be really open with understanding what's out there. Um, and like I use AI a ton to even just like brainstorm and think about like, hey, this is what I'm interested in. Can you help me be like help guide, what could potentially be good options for me? I also said this earlier, like I would try to get as much exposure to the types of roles that you're interested in as possible, as like you could have a very clear path, think it's exactly what you want to do, but learning about something and actually doing it are two different things. So the sooner you are able to actually try it out or talk to someone that has that job and turn that role, I think is a really great place to start. And you might find that where you started is not where you end up, as well as the fact that like maybe it's not just all private or all public. Like it can be a mix of both, especially with a lot of startups coming about to try and help government kind of get in touch with constituents and provide better tools and things along those lines. I think that there could be a lot of opportunity that even pops up by the time you graduate that you might not have considered. So I would say just be open-minded and try new things and be open to where it takes you.
Yeah, and to add to that, I would just, it's really important to focus on building and leveraging your network. So whether you meet people at a UAlbany event or some other type of event, make sure you're following up with them, either just saying a thank you note and saying it was nice to meet them or scheduling maybe a virtual coffee, 15, 20 minutes, doesn't have to be long, but that'll really help you while you're applying. So let's say you're applying to a job on the Hill and you notice three people in your network work in Congress. After you send the application, send them an email, let them know you applied to X amount of offices in Congress, and attach your resume and ask them, hey, if you can flag my resume to, if you know anyone in this office and can flag my resume, I would greatly appreciate it. So there's a lot of, cool different ways to leverage your network, and I think it's really helpful in finding a job. So I would just make sure to do that.
Any other thoughts?
Taking turns. Um, I would say during your time at UAlbany, it's important to take every opportunity that is available to you, which is definitely easier said than done because as students, you're so busy. But as Pam was saying before, it's good time management practice for when you're going to be busy at work. I think that the more experiences that you have and the more different that they are just makes you a more unique and attractive candidate for jobs. Like if you looked at my resume and the internship experience I had before work, it wouldn't really make any sense because it's kind of all over the place. But if you can reflect back on your experiences and like pull a couple of things out that you've learned from those experiences, even if maybe you hated the internship experience or you just realize that it's not something that you want to do for work, if you can, when you're talking about it in an interview, be able to say specific things that you learned and how it's kind of pushed you into the direction that you want, that is most important, which I think goes back to what Kaylee was saying too, like just having a positive attitude and being able to spin things that maybe if you were doing an internship and you didn't like it, you didn't like the work that you were doing, you can always try to find something that will help you and push you into the next thing that you want to be doing and just make yourself a more unique candidate for roles.
They said. I think I guess I'll stand up, but it's really not much at all because that covered everything. But I would just say do things that put you outside of your comfort zone, like something that you wouldn't expect yourself to do just to try it. I think that sometimes, I mean, even here today, I hate standing in front of a podium, but I came to do it to learn, to put myself out there. But I think it's kind of like a skill to just try new things and see how it rolls. And it's okay to just roll with the punches and do something new. And then you might find something that you didn't expect that you might like or you hated, like you were just saying. Finding something you hate also shows another direction that you should go in. So yeah, basically to echo everything they said too.
I've always said that to students. I've said there's no power in disqualifiers. Yeah. You're in a position and you don't like it, don't panic. Because it's gonna help you figure out even more what you want.
It's better to find out in an internship than in a job. So
Right.
an internship is like a couple of months, but
Not long,
anything for
more permanently, right?
exactly. Yeah.
Right. Any final questions? Students, before we wrap up? You had some good ones, so I appreciate it. All right, well, with that, we'll close out. We'll say thank you so much to our panelists for taking the time, especially at 6 o'clock at night, for being here, coming back to campus, and for being on the Zoom and chatting with our students. I think it's really helpful for them to kind of connect the dots and bridge the gap between what they're learning and how that can apply to the private sector. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Recording. Thank you, guys.